record this as well. Okay. Hello, Piper. How are you?
Hi, Julie. How are you?
Oh, good. Aimie Runyan is running a little late. We think she's going to be joining us, but we don't know yet. So for the time being, we're just you and I are just going to chat and have a good time talking about your book. So if Aimie comes on, we hope that everything is okay with Aimie and that she will be able to join us. But if not, we'll talk about your book and find out all about you. So just real quick, I'll give Facebook a minute or two just to notify people that we're here and that we're around. Just a little bit about Warwick's. Piper, I think you're calling in from Atlanta. Is that correct?
That is correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And we are located, Warwick's is here in San Diego, California. So we have the two coasts covered. If Aimie was here with us, I think she's in Colorado. So she would have had the middle covered. So hopefully I have people from all over joining us tonight. So welcome to virtual Warwick's. Like I said, we're in San Diego. We've been in business since 1896 is our little site. Amazing. So Piper was going to be talking about her book of her own design tonight. And so
it's by her own design.
I didn't have my screen and I knew I was going to mess that up.
That's okay.
So sorry about that. By her own design.
Yes.
A novel of Anne Lowe, fashion designer to the social register. There, I have my notes up now. And so I am going to, if I get a moment to break away, I'm going to try and put that into the Facebook comment section while you're chatting away so that people have a chance. If you click on that, we can ship that book to you. If you're located in the San Diego area, we'd love for you to stop by the store. So whatever works for you on getting the book, we would love that support. Or if you're somewhere that you want to support your local bookstore, we appreciate that too. So whatever you do, make sure you buy the book. Also in the comment section of Facebook, I'm going to be trying to look for questions. Usually I'm the one in the background. So this is a little, we're kind of winging it here tonight.
Team, yeah.
We're kind of winging it a little bit tonight. So if you have any questions for Piper, go ahead and put those into the comment section of Facebook and I will pull those out, and don't be shy. We love those. So let me just tell you a little bit about Piper and then we'll get to chatting. So Piper, you're the author of, I always think this is awkward when I'm talking, just so you know, you're sitting right there and I'm talking like you're not here. And it's like,
I'll look away.
Look away for a minute. You're the author of The Home to Mitford College and the Migrations of the Heart series. You're a multi-time Golden Heart finalist. She blogs about the history behind her novels on her website. And like I said, she lives in Atlanta with her husband and son. And you are talking tonight about by her own design. Do you have a copy of the book by any chance? No?
Of course not. Why would I have a copy?
Well, I'll put that into the Facebook comments there. I'll get that.
I have my tablet though. I can pull it up.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, I can pull it up.
Yeah, pull that up because I always love looking at the covers and everything.
And I love showing off the cover because the cover was a 9 times endeavor.
Oh,
can you see?
Pull it back a little bit. Kind of turn it sideways, maybe.
Turn it sideways.
No,
it's still not showing, is it?
No, it's not showing up. Oh, too bad.
Okay.
Well, I'll be putting in the chat. It'll pop up on.
Thank you.
The chat.
I appreciate
that'll work.
Yeah.
So, and I apologize in advance because I was not prepared to do the conversation, but we're going to have a great one anyway. So first, we're going to start off with, tell us about what your book is about.
Well, Anne Lowe, as the title says, was a fashion designer, and she's a fashion designer in how we think of it in the most conventional sense of someone having a fashion design business per se. And she's sort of acknowledged as being one of the first Black women who was able to pull that off. I remember growing up in the 80s as the nerdy child of 2 fashionistas. People were emerging then. They were like more Black males who were emerging, who were fashion designers, but I never remember growing up with a Black woman who happened to be doing that particular work. And so I knew who Anne Lowe was in the back of my mind as the designer of Jackie Kennedy's wedding gown, which is one of the most photographed wedding dresses in history. But I didn't know much about the particulars of her life. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So was there a lot now because she designed Jackie? I mean, that obviously elevated her to a status that was just like, so was there a lot of research material for you to go back to and find out about her?
Well, the problem is that even though she designed and actually had to make the dress twice as part of the book, she was not given credit for having done that.
Because of the times, right?
Yeah, because of the times. So yeah, we all know how important it is, or whenever you watch the Oscars, if you are like that, if you watch the Oscars, if you watch the Met Gala show, right. People ask, who are you wearing? And people will say, imagine if someone didn't say.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
this is why people don't know who Anne Lowe is. This is because she was what one of the subtitles of the book originally was, society's best kept secret. These very wealthy women of the social register, Vanderbilts, DuPonts, Rockefellers, Roosevelts, Marjorie Meriwether Post, they would talk about Anne amongst themselves.
Oh.
And pass her name from there, amongst themselves. But as far as publicly speaking, she was not named.
I don't want to give too much of the book away. I mean, I don't want you to give too much of the
book away. This is
okay.
Yeah,
but that had but that had to have been wow. I mean, so you have this, you're traveling in these circles and because you're dealing with these women.
She was actually even listed in the social register. Yeah. But
and you are, I just can't even imagine. Is there anything, did she keep any diaries or anything about how she felt about that?
Her entire love of what she wanted to do was to make these custom gowns for evening wear and wedding wear. That's all she ever wanted to do. So we don't have those records of a diary or anything like that. Right. But we have the dresses. So they are an artifact that I researched that allowed me to examine them. I'm not a textile scholar. I'm a literary scholar. But there was a young woman named Margaret Powell who did her thesis about Anne Lowe. And she had a blog where she would post articles about her research on Anne Lowe prior to when Margaret Powell was her name, prior to her death. She wrote a lot about her and was beginning to get some notice in terms of what it was she wanted to do to elevate Anne Lowe to her status, her rightful status as a Negro fashion designer who had been designing since during the 20s to the 60s.
And when did she start doing that? What time period did she start trying to elevate?
Margaret Powell started about 2010, 2011.
Okay.
I think her thesis is dated like 2015 or 16. And then she
So died. There was a huge swath of time.
Yes. Oh, yes. Where she was basically erased.
And she was erased while she was almost erased while she was
doing it. Exactly.
But wow.
Yeah, because as you were saying, contemporary speaking, one of my research sources was the April 1961 issue of Ladies' Home Journal that interviewed Jackie and asked her who had made her dress. And what it says, it's not said in a quote, but it's said in the text, a colored seamstress made her dress. And Anne Lowe was far more than a seamstress. Right. These were individual creations that she created.
That she designed. It was not like she was not just sewing somebody else's design.
Right. Exactly. One of a kind. And and so you're right. Contemporarily speaking, she was not getting the credit for what it was that she was doing. Another one of her very famous commissions was the dress that Olivia de Havilland wore to win her first Academy Award.
Are you kidding?
No.
Wow. Sorry, I'm so shocked by. I'm just like, I'm sorry to be shocking, but it's just like it's shocking that
Yeah, in 1947, when she won the Oscar for To Each His Own, she wore a custom made, but if you looked at the tag, it's Sonia. And Ann Lowe did it. And if you go Google it, you'll see it's a strapless gown. It's an early example of the strapless trend that really became popular in the 50s. It was in the 40s when Ann made it. And her usual signature were flowers, something floral. This time she didn't have fabric flowers on it, but she hand painted by hand the entire front of the dress with this floral signature that sweeps from the bosom all the way down to the floor. And she got no credit. She got no credit for that.
Sounds gorgeous.
Yeah, it is. It's really
So where are all these dresses? I mean, are they all in different places where you said you did your research? Are they all in different? I mean, I'm sure Jackie's is at the Smithsonian, I'm assuming.
It is not at the Smithsonian. It is at the Kennedy Presidential Library.
Oh, okay.
And it's no longer on display. It's a replica that's on display of this very famous dress. So someone made a replica because it was fragile.
Okay.
But a lot of Ann Lowe gowns are in different museums. This is where they're kept because of the quality of her craft that she put in.
When did they get put into the museums? Is a curiosity.
It was about 2000 when there was such an entity as it was called the National Black Fashion Design Museum, who started collecting up these things. The Smithsonian acquired what they had for what's now known as the National Museum of African American History and Culture. And some other museums acquired them from former owners, etc. So they're kind of spread out as a collection. So
this organization went and got them all. And then did they like go out to these museums and say, hey, is that kind of how that works?
Well, no, it's just like I said, that when the organization folded, the Smithsonian came in took over what they had. Yeah.
Got it.
And then some other museums had some other ones, like the Met.
Okay.
This past May, they opened an exhibit about American fashion, and 4 of Ann Lowe's gowns are there.
Wow.
Yes, in New York right now till September.
Wow. I'm enjoying this.
I'm enjoying the book. So cool.
I love that too. Yeah. So I am enjoying this so much, but you know what, everybody? Aimie is just now joining us. So I'm going to pop in and bring Aimie into the room here. Hold on. I've lost this here.
We're so excited.
So, yeah. And so I wanted to tell you too, Piper, that Nikki Coffee is on.
Oh my goodness. I am so sorry. I do not know why. I mean, I had this on my calendar for ages. Hold on just a second. I'm like, okay.
You're live. By the way, you're live on Facebook right now. And
I am such an idiot. So. Okay.
Not at all.
This is not working. Oh, hold on.
Is that working? Can you hear us?
Can you hear us?
Hello. Of course, this week has just been chaos.
Of course.
Okay. I'm just going to have to go. Okay. I can't get these to connect. All right. I am so sorry. Oh my gosh.
Hey, no worries at all. We were having a great conversation.
Hi, everybody. So we're live, right?
We're live. We're on Facebook. And actually, Piper and I have been talking. We kind of got into a little bit about who Ann was. And so we've gone to like what the dresses were. Can you hear us okay, Aimie?
Yeah, I can now. Yes.
Okay. And Julie, you said my cousin was on here.
Yeah, Nikki Coffee is on.
That's who that is.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, hi cousin.
Yeah, Julie was saying my family would come on, and there you go.
So. There you go. I love that.
I just have to apologize. I mean, I have like reminders all over the place. You'd think that, I'm like planning for a research trip in like 4 days.
I told her.
We I think we got some good information out, but I'm going to go away and we kind of have covered some of who Ann was a little bit, but I was asking just some pretty general questions. So I'm sure you've got
great.
Some more. So anyway, so I'm going to go away now and you two have a great rest of your conversation.
Thanks, Julie.
Sure thing.
So Piper, first of all, I was so excited when I heard about this book. When I saw that, the cover and I heard about the premise, I'm like, this is an amazing topic. How are there not 8 books on this? And isn't that an exciting thing in historical fiction where there's nothing new under the sun to find this new unmined territory? So did you go into this, and tell me if you have, how you came to this topic? Because I know a little.
Yeah, you know a little about this, but
I do.
We're the same editor, so that's why.
Yeah. So I know the backstory, but I think it's super fascinating for our folks at home listening.
Yeah, I just explained to Julie that she had always been someone who was in the back of my mind, knowing who she was, but I didn't know the particulars of her life until I was on Twitter, probably not writing, but being on Twitter, and noticed that Tessa had retweeted an article about Ann Lowe, or what I would call the beginning of the Ann Lowe zeitgeist that has been happening over the past 3.5 years or so, where there have been a number of articles out there about her that have been put up. And I saw the article, and then when I read about her life, and of course I went and looked up some more stuff, what I came across was Margaret Powell's blogs mostly. I said, oh, okay, this woman's life can certainly be a novel. Because you come across like biographical, this historical fiction, not everybody's life is suitable for such a thing.
Yeah. And, sometimes you have the person whose life they're like, tangentially related to somebody cool. And there are things you can do with that, but you have to invent a lot. Did you were able to just pretty much pull everything from the history books for Anne, weren't you?
Well, there's not much about her in the history books.
Well, but like her archives, her and primary source material. You didn't have to invent a lot, did you?
Well, there were a lot of things that I did have to invent, though. Yeah. One of the questions Julie asked was, did she leave a diary or whatever? This woman was only consumed with creating these dresses. She did not have time to leave behind those kinds of things, primary sources. The dresses are there.
Yeah, and that's a story right there.
Yeah, that was one thing that I noticed. But I also, I said, relied upon Margaret Powell's thesis, who I dedicated the book to. She, as a scholar, as a textile scholar, had been doing some work from about 2010-ish on in terms of Ann Lowe, I guess in anticipation of her writing or wanting to write a comprehensive scholarly biography about her that she unfortunately never got to do.
Oh, that's too bad. Yeah.
That's why I dedicated the book to her.
Oh, that's wonderful. And it's kind of a way to make sure that the story got told through your own medium.
Exactly.
So that's a wonderful tribute to that scholar. I think that's lovely.
Yeah.
So what was something that you found in Anne's history that was, one of the more gripping or interesting or unexpected things that you learned about her?
Well, the whole aspect of her early life as a child bride, which she later came to this thought, I guess, from her rich society clients, that was kind of a icky thing. And so she tried to cover it up a lot in terms of how young she was married and how early and young she was when she became mother.
Yeah, 12. She was 12 when she was married. That's so young.
15, she was mother, so.
Yeah, that's so young.
There was a bit of a reinvention, it seems like, of herself in terms of that entire first marriage, how abusive it was, all of that other kind of stuff. So that's pretty shocking. And really, the whole aspect of it that really is shocking, and I think we've talked about this before, is how it's still happening in some quarters.
Oh, I know. It's just horrific. I remember. Yeah, it's
I
terrible.
didn't expect when this book was published that it would be a relevant social issue, here in 2020.
Not here, but it is. And I remember after I read the advanced copy of your book, and I was sitting around the dinner table with my children, who my daughter is 9 and my son is 11, and telling them that I was reading the story and that the protagonist got married when she was 12, and they all have 12-year-old friends, and they just could not wrap their little heads around it. It's just, to imagine what that must have been like for her.
Yeah.
And, it's just absolutely so hard, but you can understand why she wanted to reinvent herself.
Yes.
Just because she, wanted to leave that in the past, and she's creating this image because, I don't think that we can overstress. Can you tell us a bit more about the people that she chose? She was very selective about her clientele. Who was she sewing for?
She said she did not cater to any Mary or Sue. She only wanted to sew for people who had been in the social register. And I said, these are some of the most famous, most wealthy people that we know about: Vanderbilt, DuPont, Roosevelt, Marjorie Merriweather Post of the Post fortune, and the Auchincloss Bouvier Kennedy clan. So as it turns out, so
yeah,
that
absolutely.
was what she aimed for, and that's what she did.
Yeah, and that's absolutely incredible. And the social register kind of being the more modern day equivalent of like Caroline Astor's 400. Directly, there are people, descendants from Caroline Astor's 400 in the social register, and it's like the London Ton from Bridgerton, and all that sort of thing. So these are the people that she chose to sew for. And what do you think was her motivation behind that, given that she had such a different upbringing? These are not the people that she grew up with.
Yeah. That's why I knew, like, when somebody was on Twitter and they were talking about Anne Lowe designing a wedding gown for somebody, and it was like in the 1950s or whatever. I was like, Anne Lowe didn't design for Black people in the 1950s. So I think it was because of one of the things that I make plain early on in the book about her grandmother telling her to get with some good white people. And I think that was in her mind, as she sort of presumed that the good white people were the wealthiest white people. And to go ahead and just align herself with them so that she would be taken care of.
Exactly. And that's kind of parallel with what her grandmother's story was. Can you tell us a little bit about her grandmother's backstory? Because I think that's really interesting.
Yes, Georgia Tompkins was a seamstress of some renown in Alabama. She came to sew gowns for the women of the wives of the people in Alabama state legislature, ultimately for the First Lady of Alabama. But she had a close alignment with, I think, the Tompkins plantation where she had grown up. Her husband came along and wanted to buy her freedom, but part of the contract, in order for him to buy her freedom, the family wanted her to stay there so that they could still have her services available to them as a seamstress. So she sewed. She taught her daughter Janie, who's Anne's mother, to sew, and they taught Anne. So it was a family business.
Yeah. So that's just absolutely, there wasn't a single part of the story where I wasn't like, what? It was just plot twist after plot twist in her life. And it felt like, that it was so much happening to one person, but so utterly believable. So, and I love how you kind of weave in the mystery aspect from the very beginning about Jackie's dress. Can you tell us how that relationship came to be with Jackie and the dress? Because that's kind of the centerpiece of the whole book.
Well, Anne Lowe, as I was explaining earlier, was no mere seamstress. She first had contracted with whom she called Janet Auchincloss, the most beautiful woman ever. She thought Jackie's mother, when she married for the second time to Hugh D. Auchincloss. So she made that outfit for Janet's wedding, and then made Jackie's Deb dress, her sister Lee's Deb dress, Jackie and Lee were Debs of the Year in their respective years that they had their debut balls. And then, other evening gown commissions, etc., for the year, upwards for about 10 plus years, 10 to 15 years. So she had an ongoing relationship with them. Lee was trying to get a dress with Anne, but she thought Anne charged too much. So she went to another designer who then charged her more because of the extras. And so Anne, I put it in the book, I always had a little bit of a feeling towards Lee. But they went, when Jackie got engaged for the first time, which I think surprises some people, they didn't know that Jackie had been engaged twice, to talk with Anne potentially about some sketches and things. But then she broke up, and then the next year came back to Anne for her upcoming wedding to JFK.
Yeah.
So,
and was it, yeah. So what was the feeling at the time of somebody so prominent as Jackie using an African-American seamstress? Was it fine, or was it something that raised eyebrows?
Well, one of the things that's interesting in terms of the Jackie's wedding gown is because it's been documented in several quarters that she didn't like her wedding dress. And so the whole aspect of this was this dress her particular choice, or had Anne designed it more to the specifications of the person who paid for it, Joseph P. Kennedy, who saw the wedding as a coronation. There were 800 guests, the entire United States Senate and their wives at the church, 1,200 at the reception at Hammersmith Farm. He saw it as a coronation. He wanted a big dress, and it was a plus in his eyes that Anne Lowe was Black, because he thought that Jack could capitalize on that by getting the Black vote.
Absolutely. So it was definitely a political choice. And
yes.
Yeah, it's interesting knowing that, the civil rights movement was starting to really gain in its momentum right around then, and how, forward thinking that Jackie's stepfather would have been to thinking about Jack's political
her future father-in-law.
Or father-in-law, sorry, father-in-law.
Yeah,
sorry.
And I think that was part of it, because he was such an overwhelming, overarching personality. She couldn't tell him. So it's very much this depiction of Jackie before she became a global icon, right? This Jackie who was young, whatever, and she couldn't say to him, dude, I'm not for that kind of dress. It's not what I want. So there's always a bit of tension around the dress that carries out the story.
And I think that, this is something that my parents certainly were aware of, but maybe less for somebody our age and younger, is what a big personality Joe Kennedy was.
Right, exactly.
And how domineering. He's kind of like, you think of the big, the big fathers, the father of the Jackson family, the Jackson Five, and kind of that big domineering personality pushing their child to greatness. And
he's the ambassador, right? He's not just like
Ambassador Kennedy.
He's the ambassador. So,
such a big thing. And even for somebody with Jackie's pedigree, she's going to be cowed by that, I can imagine. And the dress being such a symbol of that, and the concession she had to make. So so what do you think was the biggest challenge, telling Anne's story, given how important she is, and how, there haven't been other novels written about her, and not much scholarly work about her yet.
Right.
But knowing that how important she is to American history and to the Kennedys' history and the civil rights movement, what do you think was the biggest challenge moving forward with this book?
Well, I don't know. I think the biggest challenge, honestly, is what's happening now. It's like trying to get people to see all of that in terms of what you just said. This whole aspect that I hope will happen is that, like, people will make room for her, like at least every February and March, something, in terms of making her a part of American history, a part of fashion history. I think that's been the challenge for me in terms of the book. I don't know, as someone who is a Black woman whose ancestors come from that same part of Alabama where she came from and all of this, there was certain things about rendering her life, even her early child bride life, that, you know, was so horrifying and everything, that just felt very organic to me.
I can imagine. And, you know, I think it's amazing when an author just aligns with the right story.
Yeah.
And, you know, sometimes you work through a book and, you know, you can do a decent job of it and you're a capable author, but sometimes the story really aligns with the author. I felt that way about Girls on the Line. That was a story that, you know, so the story of my heart. And I think that maybe this is that story for you. And yeah. So, and what did you, I'm trying to think, what was something about Anne's personality that you found interesting or fascinating, something that you didn't know about her going into this?
Well, I just think it was the extent to which that she just would not give up on her dream. I know that, you know, people have dreams. We all have dreams. I have a dream, you know, about my writing and all this other kind of stuff. But there are times when I do feel like giving up. She did not
don't we
give
all?
up. Yeah, she did not give up. And it's, I guess, to me, it's like a text in terms of that kind of determination. If people have a dream. So this is like for anybody who has a dream, to, you know, that's what her life and the outcome of her life says to me.
Yeah. And I think that that's something that you as an author could probably really identify with, because in the process of every project, isn't there a moment where we have that massive wave of imposter syndrome? Like, this is too hard. There are so many books out there. I am one voice among, you know, thousands trying to get books published, and, you know, just that overwhelming sense that this is too big.
Yeah.
And I think that you really encapsulate that well. I think you encapsulate that so beautifully.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what is something that you really wish, you know, aside from, obviously, you know, we know De La Renta, we know Pierre Cardin, we know these great designers, you know, even the more contemporary designers, you know, Kate Spade, all of the, you know, their stories, we know them. What, you know, aside from wanting Anne to earn her, or not to, she's already earned it, but to gain her rightful place in history, what are some other takeaways that you want the reader to get from this book?
Well, like I said, in terms of her ambition, in terms of that, in terms of what it was, how she put herself forward into the world, people making note even about what it cost her in terms of her ambition, and all of that kind of thing. It's just that, but the overarching thing in terms of what I do is that there's like you're saying, there's so many of these lives that we should not be glossing over or ignoring, because they have a lot to teach us, and sort of this aspect of rediscovery, more or less, of Anne Lowe, and this earlier part pushing back the beginnings of particularly Black fashion to an earlier time period. All of that is very important. So hopefully if I can play some small part in that, that's awesome.
And this is a question we sort of touched on in a previous interview, though. What do you think Anne would think of the book?
I think she would probably be very modest about the book itself, you know, in terms of that. But I think I really justified, yes, I set out to do what I meant to do, and I did it. So I think she would be pleased with that aspect.
Yeah, I think that she would definitely, you know, and I don't know, you know, obviously I don't know her, but I would think that she would be so honored at the level of respect and dignity and thoughtfulness in every layer of this book. And I mean, it is such an incredible book. I was one of those books where I knew it was going to be a big splash. And, you know, I know that it is doing such beautiful things right now, but I sat and I read it. Like, you know, there are the books that, you know, that you really have, I could not sit down and I plowed through this book in 2 days. Like, and this was not a book that I could bring myself to savor. No, it was a book that I had to dive through. It was so compulsively readable. And I think that is, a true gift to be able to blend this rich, beautiful history, but do it in such a way that is so amazingly, just page turner. And, honestly, I don't think that historical fiction has heretofore been a genre that is associated with being a page turner. It's more immersive and it's a tapestry and it's beautiful and it's books you take your time with. But this one is just, it's got the page turning characteristics of a thriller novel with the beautiful tapestry of history. And that is a gift.
Well,
so, yeah. And I want to know what is coming up next for you. Like what is down the pipeline for you?
Well, down the pipeline, I'm not closest deadline as you, but I'm on a deadline to write American Daughters, which is about Portia Washington and Alice Roosevelt, who were the daughters of Booker T. Washington and Theodore Roosevelt, respectively, and their secret interracial friendship in the wake of. In 1901, once Teddy became president after the assassination of McKinley, he had Booker T. Washington over for dinner, kind of unaware and in the fog, I guess, of being a new president, that this was a first time thing. And everybody in the whole world exploded when he did that. And so these two young women become friends almost in defiance of that explosion around that racial, what people call it, a racial incident. He had a Black man to dinner. Yeah. So it's like
it's dinner. So crazy. It's not an incident. It's dinner.
It's dinner.
It's chicken.
So that's what they. So in terms of that, and then hopefully after that, I would like to have another crack at Elizabeth Keckley. I say another crack because there is a historical fiction book out there about Elizabeth Keckley, but I have some approaches I'd like to try with it. So we'll see what happens.
Excellent. So, and so are there any other figures from history that you're dying to touch, or any other things that you are eager to explore in your career? Are you going to stick with historical fiction? Or
well, there are several figures in terms of historical fiction that I would like to examine, albeit in a similar way. Sometimes again, as I told you, looking at someone's life, you might be able to do it, you might not. You might be able to do it, might not be able to do it, depending upon descendants, that kind of thing.
Gotta be careful.
Wells is one of those who I would love to do. So if any of them happen to be watching, I would love to write about your ancestor, but like you're saying, you have to be careful.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm actually, and I'm not at liberty to talk about it yet, but I've actually been talking to the descendants of a very, very famous person. And I did not expect, like when I emailed this organization, to get like the great whatever grandson of this very famous person. And so it's like, oh, I am going to have to tread lightly if they read this book, very lightly, because there are living descendants. And you see in this like family there's an organization devoted to this family. It's like one of their aims is preserving the reputation of this major person. Is like, oh, well, thankfully I don't want to get into too much of the controversy, but still it's it's daunting, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And that's how Ida B. Wells is. Her great granddaughters are very, very invested in that legacy, and I'd love to write it. But
so that's a really interesting question, because I guess I was just always thinking out here, it's fiction, you can write whatever you want. Guess not.
Yeah.
That's not the case, I take
and
it.
Anne Lowe does have descendants. They actually came across it in the Costco, where I am hailing as Miss June this month, if there's such a thing. They came and contacted me. I was like, it's just a novel, so I hope you liked it. Yeah,
it's so nerve-wracking. And like with Girls on the Line, I was in contact with great granddaughters and granddaughters of the women who served in the Signal Corps, but I fictionalized everything. But like there was one where there's a great story about a purple fountain pen. I wrote the great granddaughter. I'm so stealing this story. I hope you're cool with that. But because it was so fictionalized, they were fine with it.
Yeah.
But man, when you're doing biographical historical fiction, it's so scary.
Yeah.
Because well, I mean, can they get? Is it just that you would get? I mean, there's no legal ramifications. It's just that
it's not.
it's just that they would just like slam you guys publicly and stuff.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing. So
okay, we do have a question, and you may have answered this, but I don't think so. Amanda wants to know: do you have a favorite dress of Anne's? And let's see, and why it's your favorite.
My favorite dress. I mean, I think, okay, when Anne Lowe had one of the research materials I'd been looking for was her appearance on the Mike Douglas show in 1964, and I couldn't find it while I was writing, but now it has since emerged and it is on the internet. So in the interview with Mike Douglas, she was talking about the Olivia de Havilland commission. And that's where I found out that she said it's not a stencil, it's freehand. And I have renewed respect for that dress whenever she said that, because it's
amazing.
Impossible.
No, I think you covered this, and I apologize if I was distracted doing the stuff in the background. Because when you said she started in the 20s, right? When she started designing?
Actually, her very first commission was when her mother died when she was 16 years old, it was 1914. And the first lady of Alabama, they were about to have the inauguration, and her mother, who was really, I think she was like 40, she wasn't no age, died in the middle of the commission. And I was seeing where she used to go and tell this woman, and the woman was like, well, that's a problem, but who's going to finish my dresses?
Oh my God.
So well, she did.
It's obviously their first, it's like, oh, that's terrible, but who's going to dress
me?
Exactly.
It's like, because it's all about me.
Yeah. So she did. Yeah.
So that was, so then it became a word of mouth that.
It was a word of mouth in terms of her saying what Janie Cole and what her grandmother had been doing was not over, that she was taking it up, and she did.
Yeah, and it all started with the little rosettes, didn't it? The little ribbon.
The fabric flowers that she would make when she was 6 or whatever. But even on the Mike Douglas show, she said she made her first dress when she was 8, and made her first patternless dress, designed her first dress when she was 10. So she's a bit of a prodigy.
Yeah, exactly. And that was the part that made me so happy. You read these stories about people who, start from adverse circumstances and make it big. But not only did Anne make a great life for herself, she did it doing what she was born to do. And that is so, that was just soul filling to read that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I missed this. I think I may have missed this too. Where did she live? Where did she live?
She was born in Clayton, Alabama. Okay. Clayton, Alabama is like 2 counties over from where my ancestors were from. Okay. And then after a time, the family moved to the capital, Montgomery, where that's where they got a lot of the commissions from, those very famous wives of the state legislature and the governor's wife.
Did she ever move up north into Washington, D.C., or did she ever?
Well, that's where she moved from Alabama, and then they moved to Dothan, back where her husband's people were from after the death of her mother and grandmother. And that's where she comes across Mrs. Josephine Lee, who was the wife of a citrus magnate. And she hired her to come make clothes for her daughters down in Tampa, Florida. She spent a certain amount of time down in Tampa, Florida, being the Gasparilla designer, that big Lenten festival they have every year. And then she moved to New York, where she lived for the rest of her life. So she was in New York, the capital of fashion, where all the rich and wealthy people were from. And Mrs. Lee approved of that move. She was someone who didn't say, oh no, you must stay here, like what happened with her grandmother. Right. She's like, you must go to New York. That's where you should go.
I thought that was so wonderful to see that from, that literally doing, them being so focused on what was right for Anne.
Yes.
In an era where that sort of thing just didn't happen.
Right.
And it was just almost, I was incredulous. I'm like, really, they were that kind? Because
they were that kind, and one of her great grandsons got in touch with me too.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
When did she pass?
Who, Anne?
Yeah.
Anne Lowe died the day after Charles and Diana got engaged in 1981. And it was one of the things that spurred me to the beginning of the book was the fact that she died the day after they got engaged, and that maybe it was on her mind about who was going to get to design that wedding gown. Yeah. That's how the book begins. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah, I wonder what she would have thought of the David Emanuel dress.
Well, it was big. So
it was big.
Yeah, it was big.
Yeah,
it was big. So I think she would have approved.
Yeah.
So,
okay, your cousin has a question.
Hi, cousin.
She says, I'm sure you answered, and she apologizes. What prompted your interest in this story, and how long a process was it, conception to publishing?
Yeah, I can't remember when Tessa sent around that tweet. It was pre-pandemic, so it was like 2019-ish. When
she's got a great habit of saying, somebody write this book.
Yeah, really. Yeah, that's what she's done for several people. Several people have gotten contracts that way.
She's got killer instinct. She knows from a good story, right? Like that.
Yeah, somebody write this book. And so, and she's done it with other things that I looked at and I was like, that's not for me. Yeah. But when I saw the analog book, I said, that's for me. Awesome. And the prologue was the very first thing that I wrote to let her know, hey, I'm working on this. Don't let anybody else.
Don't let anybody else take this.
Yeah,
and so that was 2019, and then it was published just like a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the publishing process does take, but when you probably finished writing it, I'm going to assume 2021.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was done in December of 2020.
2020. Okay. So that's
that makes sense.
That's how long publishing takes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a birthing process that takes a little bit.
It is the business of hurry up and wait.
Oh,
it really is.
So. Yeah. And then we were talking earlier, Aimie, and I think you're in the same thing. It's like Piper's now, and you're in the middle of a deadline. It's like you're promoting this book that's out right now, but you're trying to get your head around a book that you're trying to meet deadline for. So there's just like your brain never gets a break.
No, and pitching another book. I had two books due within a month, guys. I had two books due within a month. One in historical, one in contemporary, trying to come up with another concept for the historical, and promoting one, editing another, and writing a third. It's just all the time.
Yeah. So, and Nikki also wants to know, what attracts you to historical fiction versus mainstream or contemporary? Piper.
There are not enough of these stories. I always sort of play this game with my students to ask them, how many Black biopics of Black women are there that they could think of? And just to cut to the chase, there's 10. There are 10 of them in all of movie history. There are 10. This is one of the biopics, is one of the ways in which we get to learn about famous people and some of the things that they did, whatever. Mm-hmm. And that number is just way too low. So I'm out here trying to do something about that.
Well, we love that you are.
And I love that tendency. And it's new because how many biopics have been written about Elizabeth I, for example?
Exactly.
A million. We know.
At least 10.
Like we know. Yeah. We know. Like we know everything around her. Exactly. But exploring these new character. Well, they're characters for us, but these new figures from history that have gone. And that's what my tagline is. Celebrating history's unsung heroines, and there's so many of them, and I love that that's what you're doing. I think that that's amazing. There's so many.
It's so great.
And to answer Nikki's question, because my mother said so she'll know what that means.
There's some family stuff there that definitely. Well, ladies, Aimie, I'm so glad you were able to come in and join us.
Yay. My sincerest apologies, with everything going on. And I I sent my husband off on he's lecturing in Germany this week. I'm meeting him for a research trip. You know how it is. And it's just, my alarm didn't go off. I was feeding the kids. I'm like, oh, crud. And ran down the stairs.
It was all, I think Piper, you and I had a good start to the conversation. So it was all working out.
You guys are consummate professionals. I'm sure you guys did a great job.
It's all good fun. I think these virtual things are so great. As Aimie, I'm so glad you brought Piper to our attention. Piper, it was wonderful hosting you.
She needed to be here.
Yes,
I'm really glad that you leveled this one up for us. So I'm really happy and wishing you great success with the book.
Thank you so much.
And can't wait for what's what's next. So hopefully you'll all come back and we'll do this again when the next books are out.
Yes, I would love to.
All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night. Bye-bye.